Hey, it's CSEC Panda here, and as you can tell by the title of this video, today I want to talk about English B Paper 2, CXC, CSEC in particular, how to write those essays. Alright, now if you're even kind of familiar with the structure of Paper 2, you know it's an essay paper. Specifically, they want you to write these 3 essays in a pretty short amount of time. You get about 40 minutes to do each one of them. I think the paper is 2 hours and 10 minutes. So when that boils down, you really have to kind of go into this knowing what you're doing. So this is where I'm going to try to help you. Just by understanding what I did, I don't know if this will work for you, but I think it's a pretty good strategy, and I just wanted to share it, okay? The very first thing you need to do, and this is what I did because I had a very short period of time that I was actually studying for these exams. The format of the exam is the first thing to understand, right? So looking at it, as you see here, there's good news, there's bad news, and then there's stressful news. The good news is you only have to answer 3 questions. Out of that whole paper, it might look like a lot of options and stuff, but only 3 questions. Drama, poetry, prose, you pick one, you answer it, right? The bad news is that in order to answer those 3 questions, you have to be familiar with the whole play, the whole 20 poems, and the whole story, whichever story you picked. Okay, so more of the good news, they have the same question format, so it's really easy to predict what types of things they're going to be asking you. That part is really straightforward. The bad news about that, though, is that the question could be super vague, like they might just pick a topic that you don't really understand where they're coming from with that, but that's the topic that you have to work with, and you won't know until you actually get there. More good news, you have a choice in terms of which one of the questions you pick, and even like which story you picked, but having the choice can make a difference if, that works for you. Downside, though, is that that choice is like orange juice with pulp or orange juice without pulp, because they still pick the topic for you. It's either they pick the poems and the topic, or they just pick the topic and you pick your poems. So it's like 6 of one, half a dozen of the next, in my opinion. And then the stressful news, unfortunately, is that you only have about 40 minutes to write each one of these pieces, and that's not a whole lot when you have to do understanding, planning, and then writing. So that brings us to the strategy. In terms of having a strategy, this is what I used. And this has to do with knowing the question structure before you get to the exam, making an outline as soon as you have read the question in the actual exam, using the sentence prompts I'm going to kind of share after this, including some brainy bits just to sound like you're kind of smart, using some nice vocabulary because that's one of the things that they look for, and then you just get this nice polished essay out of that. Alright, so again, you're trying to hit a word count of about 400, maybe 350 words within this 40 minutes, which, depending on you, that might be really easy for you to do. It might be kind of tough, I don't know, but it's definitely a constraint that you have to work with. So, dealing with the strategy of understanding the question structure, you know the exam comes in testing drama, poetry, and prose in the 3 different sections, right? So, the first section, drama, is going to ask you what I call a 2-1-1 question, where they want to know 2 instances of the theme, 1 impact on the character, and 1 device used. That is very important to know because when you know this 2-1-1 thing, you know that you're going to write an introduction paragraph and then answer in a paragraph each of these things, and then you're going to have a conclusion, and that's going to form generally the outline of what you're doing, right? So the poetry is actually 2-1-2 because they want 1 each of an instance of a theme, the theme that they pick for you, the instance of the reaction of a character, and a device that was used by the author to portray this theme. So that can be pretty heavy, and you might end up spending a little bit more time on that one, at least I know I did. And then the prose, it's a 2-1-1, where they want you to give them 2 incidents in a book that illustrate the theme that they pick they pick for you, and it feels like they pick you for. 1 reaction that the character has, and then 1 technique that's used by the writer to illustrate that theme. So that brings us straight to the outline. Once you know what the theme is and what the question is when you get to the exam, and I will tell you, after I went and studied all about the Tempest, the Shakespeare's what I picked, and I knew all of this stuff, the question they asked was like super lame and it was about supporting characters, and I almost wasn't prepared and I really had to like pull it out of thin air. So it could be anything. But once you know what exactly you're going to be writing about, this outline is always going to work, right? You're going to have your introduction paragraph, then you're going to be answering the theme question, the impact question, the device question, the conclusion, and then same thing for the poetry, except you're going to be fitting in a comparison of the two poems. So instance 1 and 2 will be going in the same paragraph, or you could split them up into different paragraphs, but I found that when I was practicing, based on the time limit that you have, you can't really do much more than that, so this is what I recommend. And then the prose, similar, that's how the outline would generally be. So if you just jot this down on your paper and you just decide in each of these spots what exactly from whichever piece of literature you picked you're going to be using to talk about, then you just kind of fill in the blanks here and you have an outline. And hopefully that doesn't take you more than like 2-3 minutes to do. Or, you could take a little bit longer with this because honestly, the longer you spend on planning up to a point is the better the thing comes out. So you do you, but this is the basic outline that will work, okay? Okay, so we come now to the meat of the strategy, which is using sentence prompts. And that means that as you work through answering these pretty structured questions, as we see, because you know from your outline what you're actually answering now, you can start your sentences with some things like this, right? So these are positional, so like at the beginning of the piece, or near the middle, or in the first stanza, or any one of these towards the end. The point of this is just to make it feel more like you're engaging with the text, whatever it is, and like you kind of know or you have like a feeling of exactly what was going on. Obviously, you don't just want to use this anywhere, but if you can fit it in, then it really makes this feeling like you know what you're talking about, which is always important. I cannot take complete credit for this strategy. I saw a couple of English teachers from like actually Britain and stuff suggesting different parts of this, and I picked it up over my time of studying, so this idea is out there, but this again is what I would recommend doing. And then you continue on to other stuff like the writer uses whatever the device is. So the writer uses irony, and as the reader, this makes me feel. So I'll show you a little bit more of how that comes together as we go further on, but yeah. Alright, and then the brainy bits basically means to think through a little bit more of this. So it's like you are adding some quotes from the author or some other things to spice it up. Again, that seem like you're engaging with the text, that you really did read this and you understood it, and now this is the report that you're giving on it, like you are really into the text. Alright, so you definitely want to use the author's last name. So, if you're saying that Shakespeare does this, or Brutus does that, or any one of these other authors, Goodison, or whatever their name is, you refer to them in there instead of just saying the author, the author, the author. You can use their name and it just adds a whole nother level to the thing. Alright, then you want to have your literature words in there, as we have listed here. So it'll just be like, they said, or something happened to Prospero, or just keep repeating a name like that. You can call them the main character, the protagonist, the antagonist, or the persona of the poem, or whatever the thing is, but it's a literature paper, so you get some literature terms in there, and that's going to be better, right? And then if you could use some richer language, like something alludes to this as opposed to it sounded like whatever was going to happen, then it just adds that extra layer of depth to stuff, and it allows the whole thing to sound more cohesive. And so the last piece of the strategy is to do with using better vocabulary. Everybody knows this, but it might be tough in the moment because you're trying to juggle so many things to put it together. You also don't want to sound like you ate a thesaurus before you came into this exam, but at the same time, you definitely just want to use some richer words if you can. That is one of the things I look for. So I just have some suggestions here. This isn't in any way something to remember, it's really just an example of what richer language sounds like and what it can do for you. It really just elevates the whole quality of the essay that you're writing, and it makes it, just another level. So to illustrate kind of what I'm talking about here, I do have a sample essay that I had written during the days that I was getting ready December last year for this particular exam. I found some of my notes, so I've linked that. It should be somewhere linked around here, maybe in the description box, maybe up above, so you can see exactly what I'm talking about in terms of how this is supposed to come together. I hope that this helped you, or at least it gave you some idea of some strategy, especially if you were floating. Would you like the video if you found that this was even kinda okay? And I hope that you can hop over to the other video and check that out, because it really makes more sense when you see them together, but I didn't want this video to be too long. And also, that one is going to contain my actual notes where you're going to see my beautiful and very neat and very legible penmanship and my spectacular handwriting. So I didn't really want to put that into one video. That deserves a whole thing by itself. Alright, so until next time, I will see you. I hope you do really well in your exam. If you have any questions, please put them in the comment section. But otherwise, best wishes, okay? Alright,